Hello, and welcome to Storytime with Vanessa. In today's Storytime with Vanessa, we're going to be talking about traveling with animals, but in my case, traveling with cats. So many of you who have followed me for a while and who know about The Well-Traveled Cat, which is Jamie's book, know that I traveled around the world with two cats. In 2001, I was settled in South Africa, and I went to the SPCA in Cape Town, and I got two gorgeous little cats. Joey, who was the oldest boy, a beautiful ginger boy, and Jamie, who was 2 weeks younger, a black and white little munchkin. And I brought them home with me. And we started a wonderful life in Cape Town. And then I bought my first home and we all moved in there together. During that time, I was in a relationship and we decided together to emigrate to New Zealand. And obviously, we were not going to leave my boys behind. They were about 2 years old at the time. So we set about working through the quarantine system to take them to New Zealand. Quarantine system is brutal. They spent a month in Johannesburg. And then they were flown over together to New Zealand and they had to do 4 months in quarantine there. If you take them to Australia now, I think it's 7 months. But at the time, this was 2003 and it cost us 12,500 New Zealand dollars at the time for the entire quarantine process. That's almost 20 years ago and it was $12,500 then. They did their quarantine, they were together, which was much easier, and then we had a wonderful 4 years in New Zealand. I emigrated on my own to Australia with my two boys. And if I remember correctly, I think it cost me about 1,200, 1,500 New Zealand dollars at the time to get both boys flown over from New Zealand to Australia. I had to put them in a cattery for about another week whilst I got us a place to live, and then we lived very happily there for many years. Unfortunately, in 2009, we lost Joey to a hit and run in the middle of the night, but Jamie and I continued on. It's great to travel with animals, to be honest, and I would never, ever give up the time that I spent traveling around the world with both of them until we lost Joey, and then Jamie for the rest of his life. Jamie and I lived quite happily for many more years in Australia, and then I got the devil in me again and decided that I wanted to move to the US. And of course, Jamie was going to come with me. At the time, he was 16. I knew it probably wasn't the best thing for him, but I knew that as long as he was with me, he would be fine. At the time, he had chronic kidney disease, a hypothyroid condition, and arthritis in his legs and joints. But he was a trooper. He traveled for 3 days. It cost me about 2,500 Australian dollars. And in early October 2017, my little boy arrived in Austin, Texas. And we had a great time and a great life there, trying to make things work. Eventually, we ended up on the ranch south of San Antonio. And we stayed together there until I had to leave the US and go to Costa Rica. My friend, the cowboy, for those of you that have read Jamie's book, looked after him for 7 months. She was amazing, and I'm very thankful for that. And then she drove him 3 days. They drove together up to Canada to be reunited with me when I arrived. And he stood on her lap and put his paws on the window when they got to the border control person, very sweetly asking with a meow if he could just let them in so that he could be reunited with me. And we were. And it was great. We were reunited in early September 2019. And then unfortunately, on the 13th of February 2020, I had to make the heartbreaking decision of putting Jamie down. He'd been with me in Canada for 5 months at the time, and I'm so glad I had those last 5 months with him. But he was very ill, and I knew it was cruel to keep him going. But it was an amazing time. I do not regret traveling the world with these boys. I do not regret the expense that I spent. I do not regret anything about the time. Traveling with animals, having animals is an amazing experience. And even when fear crept in because I didn't know what was going to happen next, I could just wrap my arms around either of them and feel at peace and feel at home. When I lost Jamie, I felt like I lost my anchor and I was floating in open water for a while, but soon I settled. He will forever be in my heart and my mind. Both my boys were, but traveling with animals, I recommend it. Until next time.